Alliance Française de Katmandou, the French Embassy in Nepal, Nepal Economic Forum have organized a panel discussion in the scope of the Night of Ideas on the topic of the economic development in landlocked country. The conclusion was Landlinked, not landlocked. Today, supported by the Institut Français once again, we have decided to organize the second panel discussion, Débat d'idées, le temps de l'action, Linkfest, Thoughts to Actions, a more practical panel discussion with concrete examples of experiences of a wide range of panelists.
In the context of Nepal, if I fast forward it to 2025, within the next generation, by 2025, Nepal will be next door to the second largest economy of the world, based on 2006 US dollars. Fast forward it until 2050, Nepal would be next door to the largest economy, China, again in 2006 US constant dollar, and next door also to India, who will be the second largest economy of the world with the United States. What is at stake for Nepal in the next generation, looking at the prism from where we stand today? The first is how to manage China's rise, as it is, or it has become, a major global financier. Two, as it has been a major driver of global economic growth since 2008, the financial crisis that we experienced. An important point is how to manage all of that while safeguarding, while preserving the long and strong relationship with India. I would like to offer you some of my personal thoughts by identifying a number of questions or issues within that context in terms of Nepal. China is not a card. China is potentially a significant financier. China is an important and emerging relationship to manage and to develop over an extended period of time. The second point is about the challenge in managing the relationship with China. And I think that relationship does not have to be a zero-sum game. And for that, I come to my third point, that the opportunity for Nepal is to turn geoeconomics into a positive sum game, not into a zero-sum game between the two giant economic power, to pursue and to achieve Nepal's development goals and objectives. The fourth point I would make is that funding from China, while it is plentiful for the moment, would not be automatic. And that Nepal would need to articulate and implement a clear strategy as to how to manage this relationship. And it is a plan that, and this is my fifth point, that it is a plan that not only look at the typical traditional technical and economic issues, such as the competing funding sources that are available for the country, the cost of borrowing, the cost of capital, the country's absorptive capacity, and also the country's debt-carrying capacity. My sixth point, in looking at the strategy, in looking at how to proceed in the development of that strategy, Nepal needs to elevate that strategy into a robust diplomacy. And I would call it, in the context of the infrastructure deficit in the country, an infrastructure diplomacy in place.
Why our trade is so low, intra-regional or intra-sub-regional, I would say, is because of challenges in connectivity. And physical connectivity is one of the many challenges of connectivity that we are facing in this region. That is something which we are working together with NEF to understand the political and political economy aspects of these initiatives, to see how best we can take the benefits forward to the ground, to the people. And I would also like to add financial connectivity. It's very difficult unless we have good financial connectivity. Whether we have good road connectivity and other connectivity, is not going to work. I see that energy is definitely one area where things are going to happen in future. So you have to identify one or two sectors which can act as a catalytic force for our region to come together in a better way. Education and education could be, and tourism. We can have specific education-related projects which can bind these four countries together in terms of various aspects of connectivity. Ultimately, I think there is strong political will, I'd say, towards making the Bay of Bengal initiative a successful initiative. At the end of the day, there has to be an identity. I mean, SAARC, one of the reasons for the non-success or failure of SAARC is that there is no identity. So people are unable to relate with it. And tourism, I think that can create a lot of identity, large-scale employment to our youth. Energy, hydro energy and renewable energy can do that.
I always see Nepal as a land of opportunity for entrepreneurs, because there's so many things to be done, particularly in the agricultural sector, because we've got generous sun and a lot of water. In Nepal, we've got very good opportunities to deal with our neighbors, especially India, because there are bilateral agreements that levies all import taxes, which means that, and it's not only true for cheese, but for many agro-processed products with high value added, if you import a Nepali piece of cheese in India, there will be only 3% of residual import taxes. If you import French or Italian cheese, you'll have to pay 42% of taxes. But even looking beyond these two huge neighbors, these two soon to be the biggest economies in the world, I tend to look at a bigger Asia. And I think the market for premium agriculture and agro-processed product from Nepal could become much wider. And I also think that the perception of Nepal in Far East Asia is very, very good, actually better than in neighboring India. I think that one of the major hurdles for us Nepali entrepreneurs to export, more than the standards themselves, which we can reach, is actually the simplification of the processes. The process to reach these standards and to be able to prove to the importers in other countries that we are there yet. And so that calls for working with the government, and which I think is the next major step. That, along with, as Kuhlman said yesterday, I think more infrastructure and economic diplomacy, which I think is one of the focus, that could be one of the focus of the government.
Talking about the connectivity in energy sector, this regional connectivity is a very important aspect to discuss. While discussing regional connectivity, we are talking about this PVIN. I think more than SAARC, there is a very good complementary in generation mix also. Bangladesh is gas-based system, and India is coal-based system. Bhutan and Nepal being a hydro-based system. India is going to have more than 100 gigawatt of solar in near future. And these generation mix will complement each other. Without the complementary of these generation mix, the system reliability and system quality will be very low. So it is very important for connectivity in transmission. This hardware side, we have to have this type of connectivity. If we talk about north connectivity, if there is a very much potential areas to connect China with Nepal, with high voltage transmission line, very in short span of distance, very short distance. This Tibet is already connected to mainland China with extra high voltage transmission line, and China is bringing this extra high voltage transmission line up to border Nepal within 2019. That means we can connect Nepal in a short period of time because some distance is very short. That means China can also be connected to BBIN or SAARC region, and this can go up to Central Asia. The software part, this market integration is very important. Without market integration, it is not possible to have this system optimization and cost optimization part, free trading without barriers. These are very important aspects that we have to have in future to have this energy connectivity in real sense. The India's role is very pivotal role is there because all the neighbors are connected to India, and so this guideline, cross-border guideline, is very important.
Just to look back a little bit to the European Union, with a customs union, free movement of people, of goods and services has created undeniably one of the biggest, fastest growing economies, wealth, the fact how it contributed to all our countries' GDPs, and also taking the more poorer regions and countries along. If we look back at how the European Union started, it's actually, rather than an economic project, it's a peace project. It came about after the Second World War, when Germany and France said, these two world wars that were fought on the European continent should never happen again. So undeniably, should this be a model, I think, for regional integration elsewhere? I think yes. However, I think also it can only be if there is a political will. We look at SAARC, it has taken off, and I think many of the smaller countries have played an incredibly important role. We're looking at sub-regional cooperation. The BBIN is, of course, an interesting initiative, and I really hope it will help the region here to prosper. But I think in the long run, if you don't take on board the entire region, so there is no absence of, let's say, initiatives, but I think it's only through political will that things can happen.